None of us were prepared for the snow which arrived in October last year. Not only was it an emotional shock, but it came as a physical shock to animals living outdoors who had not yet acclimated to cold temperatures. My Kizzy pony was already having a difficult autumn. As a senior pony with Cushing, she begins growing a winter coat earlier and earlier every year. Last September we had some unusually hot and humid weather, but I couldn't bear to put her fly sheet on since she was already so hot with her own coat in the heat. Kizzy also has a culicoides allergy, commonly known as sweet itch, which is a reaction to the biting midges that come out in that weather, and pretty soon the poor pony was throwing herself against posts and buildings, trying to relieve the itch. On top of that, she scratched her eye, possibly in her desperation to scratch itches. Thus began about 6 weeks of treatment for the itch, the eye ulcer, and then some mild colicky symptoms, possibly as a result of the Banamine she'd been on, so we added more meds. On November 3rd, we got a heavy wet snow, and Kizzy came in that night, cold and shivering. Our power was out, and so I had no hot water for a mash, but I thought she'd bounce back, being out of the weather and with a nice pile of hay. But by 9 p.m., she was shivering violently, not at all interested in food, and obviously in pain. The colic saga began. We made it through the weekend and the colic resolved, but I was seriously beginning to wonder if it was fair to put this pony through a long, hard winter. Were all these problems indicative of a pony whose system was tired? She was thinner than she had ever been and was not cleaning up the hay I gave her, even though the dentist said her teeth were in good shape. With the encouragement of my vet, I started trying other ways to get calories into her and gradually increased amounts. Kizzy was thrilled to be getting grain for the first time in her life. I needed to spread these new foods over several meals, which meant feeding her breakfast before turnout. Since everyone always wants to get out quickly, I wasn't sure how she'd feel about this, but I needn't have worried. She thought eating grain was a fine reason to stay in a little longer when everyone else went out. While she ate, I started cleaning stalls. In about the time it took me to clean the first stall, she finished her breakfast. I soon learned that while she was perfectly happy to eat when the others were out, once she finished, she wanted to go out immediately. Her way to address this was to shove the door with her nose. In her experience, shoving things was often a good strategy for getting things out of one's way. While it wasn't immediate, it was effective, because as soon as I heard her bang her door, I put down the manure fork and let her out. I was not happy, however. I didn't like the banging, and I didn't want her to get in the habit of banging to be let out because I knew she would put it to use at other times. When we have a behavior we don't like, we can use a functional assessment to determine what is reinforcing the behavior. I learned about functional assessments from Dr. Susan Friedman in her LLA, or Living and Learning with Animals course, and I highly recommend it to anyone interested in learning more. I knew that the function of the banging behavior was to be let out. Bang the door, and someone comes and opens it for you. As far as she was concerned, it was a delightful equation. There was no reason to call it rude or call her any names. She was simply doing what we all do, behave to get a desired consequence. What I wanted was to have her ask to go out in a way that I did not find so annoying. I decided it would be fun to teach her to ring a bell to ask to go out. The equation would change from finish eating and banging a door to be let out to finish eating and ringing a bell to be let out. Kizzy had already learned the component parts needed to teach this. She learned how to target things with her nose many years ago. Starting with my fist, she also learned to target objects I held in my hand. But I would not be holding the bell for her, or else I could just let her out when I saw she was through eating. Luckily, Kizzy also already knew to go to a target that was separate from me. With all that on board, it was fairly easy to transition Kizzy to going to the bell target, and when she touched them, they rang. Now it was time to see how the strength of these various behaviors and reinforcers ranked in importance to her. There were three we were working with: going outside, eating her breakfast, and ringing the bell. If she thought ringing the bell was most fun, she might have stood and done that rather than eating. And of course we had that former behavior of banging the door. Would she choose that rather than the bell ringing? Luckily for me, breakfast trumped the bell, and so she ate rather than being a bell ringer. The time I spent practicing with the bell, with a prompt marker or click as she did so, and immediately following up with hay stretcher pellet treats, turned out to be a good history, so that when she finished eating, she saw the bell hanging where we had practiced, she promptly went to it and rang. I was watching, of course, on the first morning, so I could be sure to have a timely marker and follow right up with her food reinforcer. Over the following days, I could become more and more lost in thought as I cleaned stalls, and the bell would bring me back to the present with a smile. She became so good at this that even when she didn't get me with the first ring, she tried again rather than resorting to door banging. If you appreciated this video, please hit that like button, click on subscribe, and also click on the bell so you'll be notified when new videos come out. And leave us a comment.